Hello everyone, this is Grandmaster Max Illingworth here, and I want to show you a really nice win from the Paris Grand Chess Tour Blitz event. This was a game between Ian Nepomniachtchi as white against Maxime Vachier-Lagrave as black. In fact, MVL, as is often nicknamed, went on to win this tournament, the Rapid Blitz in Paris. But in this game, it was Nepomniachtchi who was able to win with a very nice Grand Prix attack. So the game went c5, knight to c3. And for those of you that want to play the Grand Prix attack, I find it's most effective to do so after black has played d6. And the reason is that when you put your bishop on c4, such as what happened in the game, when the pawn's on d6, it'll take black an extra tempo to get in the d5 break to challenge our bishop, and therefore white will get quite reasonable attacking chances in this case. Whereas if black didn't play d6, you'll tend to see white play some other approach. For example, meaning a6 with g3, or meaning knight c6 with bishop b5, to give a couple of examples. But returning to the game, after bishop c4, we had knight c6, castles, and e6. And here Nepo played a nice idea that also I think Chris Shook was the first to play at a really high level, where he played this move d4, and it is a temporary pawn sacrifice. Well, it depends on how temporary it is, but the point is that if black plays c takes d4, as was played in the game, then white will play knight to b5. And it turns out not to be so easy for black to keep that extra pawn, as queen b6 will allow white to take the d6 pawn. And if you play e5, then white can go for knight to g5 and go for a very quick attack against the f7 pawn as such. So that's why black played the move a6 at this point. It's true that he could also have played knight g7, which would probably be my suggestion, as it allows you to kind of hit back with d5 in the center if white takes on d4 immediately. Which is why you'll sort of see white play bishop b3 first. But then I think black gets a fine position with castles, knight takes. And now the key move is knight a5 to trade off the white bishop before white can get an attack going with f5 on the king's side. And I think that a position like this one, after bishop e3 and b6, is absolutely not worse for black at all, as such. So that's my suggestion for black from a theoretical perspective against this d4 move. In the game, black played a6 instead. And after knight b takes d4, it was probably best for black to play knight takes and then play knight f6, which leads some quite big complications after f5 they ultimately analysed to equality. But instead, black played knight e7, and the thing with knight e7 is it does keep this bishop's vision open along the long diagonal. But I think that it's also a little bit passive, and one reason I'd say this is quite a decent open ceiling for white is because of the fact that with all these pawn moves combined, the d6 pawn is a little bit soft. Personally, I think I would play knight c6 and not fear b takes c6, as it would allow us to get a foothold in the center with e5. But in the game, white played the move bishop to b3, kind of transposing to the usual lines, and black played castles. Maybe it's slightly more precise to start with knight a5 once again and go after the bishop, because here Nepomniachtchi didn't play bishop e3, which is the move I would expect, but he played c3, with the idea that now knight a5 can be met with bishop c2, although I still think that might have been the better option for black anyway, because you can at least go queen c7 and sort of make it hard for white to get the bishop out actively, as bishop e3 would naturally run into a knight c4 fork. Instead, MVL played knight d4, and I think this trade might be a little bit of a concession, as if you think about kind of both the white knights want to go to d4, and in a sense black trade off white's superfluous knight. Now perhaps the position would still not be so bad for black if he had played bishop d7 and prepared the move knight c6 to challenge a knight, and also to try and trade off some pieces while black has less space than white. Instead, well, this was admittedly not MVL's best day of chess, where he played this move e5, which is a bit of a one-move attack, I think. How would you deal with it? Would you take on e5, or would you retreat the knight in this position? So, well done if you want to play knight f3, which is a move that white played. There's really no reason yet to trade and kind of get rid of black's backward d6 pawn for him. I think the position is already quite difficult for black, but maybe the best option in a bad situation is maybe to go bishop e6, and yeah, you do get double pawns after the exchanges, but at least white's immediate initiative has been neutralized for the moment. Instead, black played queen c7, and well, it's a well-intentioned move, but the problem is it just tactically doesn't work here. So this would be a good moment for you to pause the video and think if you can find the very strong continuation that Nepomniachtchi played at this point. Welcome back, and in this position, white played the move f takes e5. You could also reverse the move order. It would also work quite well. And after d takes e5, white played knight g5. And this is just a very unpleasant attack against f7. And in fact, I only really see one way for black to cover it, which is what he did in the game, with queen b6, king h1, and now bishop e6. And okay, not a difficult question, but which way would you take back on e6? Well done if you want to take back with the knight. So after takes and takes, the point is we keep our strong bishop attacking this pawn and using the pin. Now after bishop g5, white just continues to have an increasingly powerful initiative. Black played rook takes f1 in the game. Now after queen takes, he has a problem and he can't really move the knight without this e6 pawn falling. So he tried rook to e8, and white just made sure that all of his pieces were actively placed. And already white can think about rook d7 to infiltrate with the rook, as one desires when you have the rook on the open file. So after h6 and bishop h4, well, in this position, black blundered with the move king h7, which we'll get to in a moment. But even if he tries something like g5, I think black is still technically losing. I mean, the plan here in a position like this one is, well, basically black has his quite clear weaknesses. So it's just a question of finding a way to invade and trade off black's main defenders, which we can do with the move queen d3, just defending the pawn. And if, say, knight c8, we can play queen to d7 and just force off the trade of queens. Because white has a much better structure, it means the exchanges will generally be in white's favour, as black will have less pieces to defend his weak pawns with. Now, after, say, b5, h3, and bishop f8, white has many good moves here, but what do you think is the easiest way to target black's weaknesses? So my own preference would be to play rook c7, and just to go for rook c6 and kind of destroy black's weak pawns in this way. If you want to play a4, then probably this should also be winning for white, just to trade off the pawns and open up the diagonal for white's bishop even more. In the game, black played king to h7. And okay, what's the move that Nepomniachtchi played here to force black's resignation? So nice work. I'm guessing that you've, if you didn't find already, that you paused the video, and that you then found the move queen f7. Just a simple fork on both the rook and the knight. And black is losing a full piece, so he just resigned here. So I hope you found this game somewhat inspiring and has given you a nice idea to add a bit more spice to your Grand Prix attack. Because if you do play it the old school way with d3 and going for f5, I find it doesn't really work that well, where not only can black sort of delay castling to kind of take the sting out of f5, but he can also even castle and kind of say that the that the attack is just not quite worth a pawn. So you can sort of bring the piece to defend the king against the usual queen h4 in this case. Right, I find that this plan tends to work better when they already have the knight on f6. So say if you had, for example, this setup, that's when this kind of typical attack with f5 and these sort of moves will tend to be a lot more effective by comparison in this sort of situation. So yeah, that was this video on a nice Grand Prix attack by Nepomniachtchi against MVL. Feel free to leave your questions and your feedback in the comments below. And it's Grandmaster Max Illingworth. I'll see you in the next video.